You're on the Bible Forum. It's Sunday night, the last Sunday in November 2019. Have you ever heard of eugenics? Of course you have. Do you know where it came from? Do you know why it exists? Eugenics and population control have been around a long time. They've been hobbies of the financial elites. In the early 1900s, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Institute, were deeply involved in promoting eugenics laws in the United States. These laws led to the forced sterilization of over 60,000 American citizens in states like California and thousands of rejected marriage licenses. However, the eugenics programs were only a beta test, a test of these ideas that were implemented in Germany under Hitler and the Third Reich in the 1930s. Here was a truly widespread eugenics-based population control program. The Carnegie Institute established a, quote, eugenics records office, end of quote. It was called the Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory, 1904. It collected genetic data on millions of Americans and their families with the intent of controlling their numbers and erasing certain traits from the U.S. population. The Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory still exists today and presents itself as a kind of philanthropic endeavor to help humanity. With the exposure of the Nazi programs, the word eugenics became ugly. In the late 1960s and into the 1970s, there was a resurgence of population control rhetoric coming out of global circles. Under the supervision of the UN and some related scientific groups, the Club of Rome was formed. A prominent part of the Club of Rome's agenda was population reduction. In 1972, the group of scientists under the UN's direction published a paper called The Limits of Growth. This paper called for a greatly reduced human population in the name of saving the environment. This gave rise to the institution of a global government that could handle and enforce population controls on a wide scale. In this was found a new scientific front for population control, climate science. In the early 1990s, the Club of Rome published a book called The First Global Revolution. In Chapter 5, they state, quote, in searching for a common enemy against whom we may unite, we came up with the idea of pollution. The threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. Together, these phenomena do constitute a common threat which must be confronted by everyone together. Heretofore, the effort has been focused on symptoms, but all these causes are by human invention. And it's only through changed attitudes and behavior that they will be overcome. They say the real enemy is humanity itself. In the 1990s, at the same time, the first global revolution was being published. UN Assistant Secretary General Robert Mueller was publishing his manifesto, which is now collected on a website called Good Morning World. Through fear of environmental apocalypse, the public could be convinced to accept global government as a necessary nanny state to keep society from destroying itself. In a paper entitled Proper Earth Government, a Framework and Ways to Create It, Mueller outlines how climate change could be used to convince the masses of the need of global government. Of primary concern was human population, and the target was energy output. They would have to be reduced dramatically in order to survive on the meager energy output of renewables alone. The hope was for a major energy disaster. Without it, the public at large would not be interested. The planners soon realized that simply threatening a disaster would not motivate even the most liberal. Without an aggressive crisis, most people would never go along with the UN's agenda out of simple desire for self-preservation. The key to understanding people who cheer for population control or population reduction today is that these people always assume that they will be the survivors, and thereby the inheritors of the earth after its culling. They never assume that they may be the ones put on the chopping block. Now, the problem is that climate scientists have been consistently caught red-handed manipulating their own data to show the intended outcome of global warming. They have even been caught trying to adjust their own data from 20 years ago in order to match it more with their projections. We see it today in presidential candidates. Bernie Sanders arguing for birth control measures in poor countries. Elizabeth Warren promoting abortion as safe as getting your tonsils removed. The openness of the plan to cut world population is becoming apparent. Now, the facts are that population levels in Western countries is declining. There are barely enough children being born to keep the current population stable. However, this doesn't seem to be enough for the globalists. Globalist Ted Turner, in a moment of honesty, said when confronted by We Are Change that the population should be reduced from its present 7 billion down to 2 billion. That means addressing the billions in poor nations around the world. Addressing the billions. Getting rid of them. Who gets to pull the trigger on this culling of the population? Well, history shows us that it's the elites. Not necessarily the wealthy, but the pseudo-elites in government. For the last 120 years, the globalists have been a veritable death cult. Our fixation with global warming is one of their tools. There's no proof that there is such a thing called global warming, but it is a valuable tool in their agenda. You see, a reduced population, completely dependent on limited energy sources, might be easier to dominate. But the author of this piece has another theory. He supposes they are psychopaths, looking for a socially justifiable way to kill as many people as possible. He might be right.